Ever heard the phrase Frontline States and wondered what that actually means in the South African context? Let me map it out. Fast, clear, and super useful. Picture Southern Africa in your head. South Africa sits at the bottom of the continent. Now ring it with neighbors that in the 1970s and 80s stood right on the front line against apartheid and white minority rule. That ring is what people mean by the Frontline States. Who were they? The core group formed in the mid-1970s. Tanzania, Zambia, Botswana, Mozambique, Angola. In 1980, after Rhodesia became Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe joined too. Lesotho, Swaziland, today Eswatini, weren't formal members because they were economically tied to South Africa, but they often cooperated and got pulled into the pressure and the fallout. Why frontline? Because these countries physically bordered white-ruled territories, South Africa, Rhodesia, and they hosted liberation movements. The ANC and the PAC found bases, offices, training sites in Tanzania, Zambia, Mozambique, and Angola. That made those states literal front lines, politically and militarily. What did they do? Three big things. Security coordination. Leaders like Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Seretse Khama Samora, Machel Agostinho Neto, and later Robert Mugabe met regularly to share intel and strategy. Diplomatic pressure. They lobbied the UN, the non-aligned movement, and Western governments for sanctions and isolation of the apartheid regime. Economic rerouting. In 1980, they launched SADCC. Think of it as the forerunner to today's SADC, to reduce dependence on South African ports and railways by building alternative corridors through Mozambique, Tanzania, and Angola. There was a heavy cost. Zimbabwe's independence in 1980, Namibia's in 1990, and finally South Africa's democratic transition in 1994. The Frontline States framework wound down and folded into a broader regional project. The Southern African Development Community, SADC, which still handles cooperation and security today. So, short answer. In the South African context, Frontline States were the coalition of neighboring countries, Tanzania, Zambia, Botswana, Mozambique, Angola, and later Zimbabwe, that stood on the edge of apartheid South Africa, hosting liberation movements, pushing diplomacy, and taking real hits to help end minority rule.